test, baby, 1, 2, 3. Sorry.
That's a keeper.
No, you cannot use that.
What? That's not fair. Hey, Blading on the Brain. Welcome to another episode. And first off, I just want to say thank you for everyone who watched and commented and sent me, some love about the last episode with Karen and I, where we unpacked the issues I was facing in recovery that were brought on by OUSD's strike. If you haven't seen that video and you want to know about what our first conversation looked like, check for the card above. That'll be a good link for you to go back and check out our video where we unpack my feelings related to the OUSD strike. And in that video, I asked the question, if you had an occupational therapist that you felt comfortable talking with, what would you ask them?
So we got a question from your friend Brian.
We sure did.
And it was about his son.
Yeah, so props to Lord Brian. Check the video for the comment. It's embedded in my question. Oftentimes I'll ask the whole group a question and then I'll pin it to the top. So if you ever see me pin something to the top, like after this video, I'll ask, what are some other follow-up questions you may have? But Brian is a dad. He's a blader. He's a homie from New York. He's a subscriber. And his son, Iron Boy, is a champion for what it looks like to be a resilient young man dealing with brain tumor, having a brain tumor removed. And honestly, if you want to read more about Iron Boy's story, I'm gonna put a link down below that takes you to the blog spot or the WordPress where they've been keeping track of all of Iron Boy's journey, and also to the GoFundMe where you can help support Iron Man.
You jumped in the future a little bit.
Yes.
Currently Iron Boy.
He's not yet a man. He'll get there though. If you want to support Iron Boy, check out the GoFundMe. I'll put a link to that as well.
And then Brian, your question was, what is the proper way to explain to my son that some of the information that he is trying to retain may take a bit longer to be stored due to the nature of his surgery and treatment after? And you talked about how this was a question that actually came up for you and I think your partner, and just trying to understand, what are ways to discuss this with Iron Boy? So when we talked about that question, and again, we don't know Iron Boy personally, and so these are just thoughts that came up in our discussion, were things like really normalizing that experience. That, we all have a difficult time remembering things sometimes, and each of us has even more of a difficult time remembering certain things and in certain contexts sometimes. So, for me personally, when I'm under stress, if I'm juggling too many things, that is when I am really not tracking and remembering things in the same way that I am when I have less on my plate.
You do a really good job. I mean, as your husband, I noticed that you do a really good job of normalizing that for other, especially expecting mothers. Like I've noticed you talk about that with other young mothers or expecting mothers being like, you're in that mommy brain, I got you, I understand where you're at. Mm-hmm. And I think that's your superpower. And, your superpower can be just normalizing what it's like for an adult, right? An adult, a dad. I know for myself, I like to bring to light as a parent moments where I struggle with the same things that my sons are struggling with at that moment. So they see that there's a continuing learning that you have to have in order to remember everything. I don't know that I had a good memory before my injury, but I know it's... Yeah, I guess it was I'll agree with that. But I know that in recovery, it's been really helpful to start finding new ways and tools and skills to offset some of my challenges.
And I'm going to backtrack just a second to something you said about Brian just modeling. I think that for all of us with children, all of our children put us on pedestals, and children put other children on pedestals, and adults put other adults on pedestals, and oftentimes we think we're the only one who feels the way that we do when we do. And so that notion of normalizing and also showing our vulnerability and our weakness as really a vehicle for that normalization can be really powerful with our kids. And so like you were saying, the tools you use, the resources you use, all of us use tools to remember things.
Yes.
And in this day and age, I think it's actually that much more obvious because, you know, some of us, part of my brain is in my skull and part of my brain is in the notes app on my phone.
It's $1 million industry. I mean, there's calendar on calendar apps, task managers and reminder apps. And yeah, it is a whole industry built on the fact that we need these tools to help us with the compartmentalization of information and dates and all the different tangibles that we have to keep track of.
So I think about, you know, a child too, and how some of that can be gamified and can be fun. And right after your head injury, we had a family calendar that I think was like the highlights magazine calendar that our kids had that was color coded with all the different appointments and all the different things that we had to remember. But we got our kids really involved in that too. So it was, you know, this family external hard drive that we use, but it was, you know, it's a highlights calendar.
It's old school. It's analog.
Yeah.
Analog tools exist. I love note taking. In my recovery process, especially jumping into a position of management kind of right away, it was very important that I developed a system for keeping track of my thoughts that kept me present in the moment. I'm in meeting after meeting after meeting some days, and having visual note taking be my superpower right now has really helped me to keep track of my thoughts and really to kind of put everything on paper in a way that makes sense with pictures and colors and just like really attracts me to the information, and thus I read it again, and thus I remember more of it, and I am highlighting the really salient points. And so that right now, that's my superpower in recovery and dealing with the fact that my injury is a frontal lobe injury. So like organization and memory are very, very apparent, the loss and the challenges and barriers.
Well, and you've reframed it in a way that rather than focusing solely on that, you know, your memory is not what it was before, your organization is not what it was before, you reframed it as to, I'm going to try this note-taking strategy, and I'm really digging on it. And like, I get compliments for how I take notes, and I get people asking, will you be the, you know, the secretary for our thing, and you show me how to do our notes. So I really think about, you know, Iron Boy and how helping him to reframe that his current circumstance regarding his memory also can really become like his superpower and his skill and the tools that he uses. And the other piece is that, you know, he's young.
Oh yeah.
And the brain is plastic. And in the same way that the rest of his body is going to continue to grow and change, so is his brain. And I think that that's a really hard concept for all of us, but including children, because children aren't thinking about, you know, future as much as they're thinking about the now. But helping him to identify his strengths and again, his use of tools, or his brain that is not in his skull, but his brain that might be in a notebook or in some kind of app, are really some of his superpowers, and that those are skills that also translate into, you know, how you are a student, right? Note-taking skills.
His love for creativity, his love of Star Wars, right? I mean, I bet, Iron Boy, you're the prime artist for like all new lightsabers that could ever exist. Start there. Start drawing lightsabers. I want to see some lightsabers. And honestly, like, this was a really great opportunity. So thank you, Brian. You go about shut up and skate, because that's what we all should do. But thank you for bringing a question to us so that we could discuss. It helped really just once again reflect on my recovery and my process, and then figure out a way in which to bring it to more people. And so if you have questions like Lord Brian's, if you want to know more about what it's like to have a TBI, or you have questions about your own recovery process, please hit us in the comments below. Like the video, always good. Hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and comment down below. As always, thank you to Uranus and Chris Bjerre. Peace.